Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Just continuing now on this article by Chinese Commerce Minister Chen. If there's a trade war between the United States and China, the U.S. will lose. Granted, everybody will lose. The U.S. will lose big because everything consumed here is imported. The U.S. has systematically destroyed its industrial base. So far, that's fine. China undoubtedly has a right to peg their currency as they wish. That is an inherent sovereign right. Forget globalization and globaloney. If you want to have a fixed parity with the dollar or something like that, you have a right to currency stability. Not only do you have that right, everybody has such a right. The best answer to this would be fixed parities all around: dollar, euro, yen, renminbi, Russian ruble, Latin American currency, Arab world currency, all with fixed parities and ultimately with clearing and gold settlement. That's Bretton Woods, in effect. That would be part of it, at least. Chen also wants the U.S. to resume high-tech exports to China, this equivalent of the COCOM list, which has been embargoed, basically, since Tiananmen 20 years ago. Fine. You should be able to buy this stuff. However, Mr. Chen is a Harvard-educated person. He's not from the Youth League faction. He would seem to be from the elitist globalization faction in China. As long as you're arguing Chinese sovereignty, fine. But when you're arguing globaloney and globalization, then the answer becomes no. He goes on in this interesting interview with the Washington Post to say manufacturing is not going to return to the United States. There will be no rebirth of manufacturing in the United States because of globalization. Well, I'm sorry. At this point, we must differ very vigorously. The goal must be to reindustrialize the United States, and if that means some consumer electronics, that would also be perfectly understandable. World trade should focus on capital goods of the most modern type. There is no particular reason to ship cheap consumer electronics all around the world. Everybody can take care of that on their own. He also seems to be saying that a protective tariff by the United States is inherently a bad idea. Wrong. A protective tariff for the United States, along with other measures of dirigism and mercantilism and protectionism, is absolutely essential in order to rebuild the U.S. economy. Otherwise, we have the giant sucking sound to Mexico, to China, to Vietnam, to Burma, and to other places. Eventually, it'll be the sucking sound into even lower wage areas. You cannot compete with sweatshop labor working on cheap land and cheap buildings with cheap components. Obviously, you've got to use technology in that regard. So a problem there. Now, we're also told that the U.S.-Russian START treaty is now in the final phases. According to Russia, a done deal. According to the U.S., almost a done deal. This is now the attempt of the U.S. to offer carrots to Russia to become the enforcer vis-a-vis Iran. Russia does not seem to go along with this. The Russians have announced that the work on the Bushehr reactor in Iran will now be resumed. Finally, we have this attack, worldwide attack by Anglo-American intelligence against the Vatican and the Pope, Pope Gregory, Pope Benedict in particular. So the Pope is under attack. Now, what is the point of this? It's the usual story of the pedophile priest. Now, we know in every religion, in all times, in the Boy Scouts, you name it, wherever there are these situations, this stuff emerges. So why now? Why with this target? Why make this explode in Ireland, Germany, and so forth? It has to do with the Vatican and Berlusconi, I would submit. Berlusconi, of course, the most interesting head of government in Europe, far better than Gordon Brown, Sarkozy, Merkel, any of these people, because of Berlusconi's close relationship with Putin of Russia. The Pope Benedict and the Vatican, under this situation, is thought to be closely allied with Berlusconi. And therefore, what the Anglo-Americans are attempting to do is the preparation of a color revolution or CIA people power coup in Italy. And this is now the Violet Revolution, the Violet, V-I-O-L-E-T, not violent, but violet. It has been violent in the sense that Berlusconi was hit in the face with this large paperweight in December of last year in Milan, and then the Pope, you remember, the Pope tackled on Christmas Eve by a deranged patsy sent into the Vatican by some intelligence community clique of somebody. But what you're going to see now in the springtime is an attempted CIA coup in Italy to oust Berlusconi and bring in a puppet government. And since the Vatican is such an important part of Italian politics in general, you can see, I think, what's going on there. Do not choose sides in this so lightly. Do not fall into the Pavlovian nonsense of joining in with British intelligence as they attack the Vatican, because this is something strategic. It eventually comes down to things like the South Stream pipeline, which is promoted by Putin now with the support of Turkey, Italy, some countries in the Balkans, and others. It is the desire to stop that. Now, just to look back to Weimar once again, last week we were talking about the fact that we've just about reached the point of the fall of the Müller government, the Social Democratic Grand Coalition under Hermann Müller, in March. That's 80 years ago. This coming week, the Müller government fell on March 27th, 1930. So that's when some of you may be listening to this broadcast. And on March 30th, 1930, we got the Brüning government, the austerity dictatorship. And the relevance of this is overwhelming. Brüning is the most extreme example of a fanatical attempt in a world economic depression to get out of the crisis by balancing the budget, by cutting the budget, by cutting social services, by cutting wages of civil servants, that is to say government workers. The salaries and wages of German government workers were cut by 25% by Brüning between 1930 and 1932. Extreme austerity dictatorship, so extreme that it was impossible to find a majority in the German parliament, the Reichstag, for this method. It is estimated that under Brüning, the budget was cut in Germany by 17%. Almost one-fifth was cut out of the German budget. Now, this is relevant because this is what's going on in states, municipalities, counties all over the United States, and it's ultimately Obama, as he shifts to long-term deficit reduction, will begin to inaugurate this policy, and then it's likely to be carried on further by Petraeus Romney, the next regime, if they succeed in winning the election. So we have pay-go under Brüning. We have a poll tax or head tax, a very regressive tax. We have a tax on bachelors. If you're not married, you get taxed. If you're a woman and your husband has a job, you get fired. The unemployment benefits were cut in the amount and in the length of time. When they had 6 million unemployed, 33 to 35%. The unemployment benefits, the unemployment insurance, were cut down to 20 weeks, and at the same time, the amount you paid in went from 3.5% to 6.5%. This is austerity, austerity, austerity. The skilled workers had a series of pay cuts so that they were earning just above the poverty line. During the 2 years of Brüning, national income went down by 41%. It's taxes on beer, taxes on tobacco. We just heard this morning that about 15 states are in the process of increasing their tobacco taxes. It's Brüning time. So we've got lots of little Brünings running around all over the place. The lesson of Weimar is if you've got little Brünings running around and if you've got little Hugenbergs running around, you may soon have little Hitlers running around. And I don't mean just Glenn Beck, but little Hitlers of a type that have to be taken much more seriously. Anyway, this is the anniversary of Germany passing, in some ways, the borderline between a democratic government and an austerity dictatorship under von Hindenburg and Brüning. We'll talk about this much more in coming weeks with the 80th anniversary. See you next week on World Crisis Radio. Keep up with Tarpley.net.